Liguria, with its rugged coastline, lies between the mountains and the sea. Here, nature coexists with humanity in a balance all of its own. Welcome to the Cinque Terre, 5 colorful villages clinging to the cliffs between sea and sky. Each has its own unique charm, character, and traditions. A UNESCO World Heritage Site. La Spezia, with its gulf and green mountains, is the beating heart of the region and the gateway to this enchanting landscape. The architecture tells a centuries-old story with its palazzo-type buildings, pastel-toned houses, and ancient churches giving it a lasting legacy. Local traditions celebrate the age-old connection between the inhabitants and the sea, between past and present, whereas inland, rivers wind through its lush valleys in stark contrast to the rocky coastline. The hilltop villages and breathtaking landscapes are a constant reminder that the region is a refuge for the soul and a source of inspiration for artists, poets, and dreamers. For nature lovers, it's a special place where sea and mountains meet. Liguria, a region in northwestern Italy, stretches the length of the Mediterranean coast between Tuscany and the French border. Its 350-kilometer-long coastline is dominated by steep mountains that plunge directly into the sea, creating a dramatic landscape. Spanning 15 kilometers, the Cinque Terre National Park owes its name to its 5 coastal villages: Monterosso, Vernazza, Corniglia, Manarola, and Riomaggiore. For many years, they were connected only by footpaths to each other and the inland villages. Down in a sheltered cove, Monterosso is a charming place. Although it's the oldest village of the Cinque Terre, it's also the liveliest. Its origins date back to the 11th century. At the heart of the village is the majestic church of San Giovanni Battista. Its Romanesque architecture, featuring wide openings and bichrome walls of marble and green serpentine, is a work of art. Next door is the oratory of the Confraternita dei Neri, built in the 16th century. Its Baroque ornamentation and gilding offers quite a contrast. On crossing the hill of the Franciscans, which divides the village, one comes to Feggina Beach, the only one in the Cinque Terre. This stretch of sand, overlooked by luxurious villas, bears witness to Monterosso's illustrious past. On sunny days, the beach is the main attraction, a place to relax and soak up the sun beside a turquoise sea bathed in the atmosphere of the Cinque Terre. Several cliffs away lies Vernazza, nestling in a natural cove and protected by a rocky spur, which is home to an ancient watchtower. Its small port, once a shipyard, is now the heart of the village. It's surrounded by a cluster of colorful houses, which lead to the church of Santa Margherita d'Antiochia, whose proud outline testifies to Vernazza's past wealth and glory. Silvio Moggia is a renowned painter in the region. Born in Vernazza, he now chooses to live inland in more peaceful surroundings, but the colors and changing lights of his village remain etched in his memory.
Questo è Vernazza.
This is Vernazza, the village where I was born some years ago.
E l'ho dipinto.
And I painted it whilst thinking about my childhood, spent in an almost deserted village, an empty beach. There were only a few of us kids playing on the beach. There wasn't all this tourism. These are the typically colored facades of the Cinque Terre and Vernazza. And I felt nostalgic about those years gone by, so I did this painting. I went further inland, into the countryside, taking with me, I think albeit subconsciously, the colors of the Cinque Terre which appear in my abstract paintings of today. This is a figurative and abstract painting, but the colors of the Cinque Terre are equally present in this abstract work. Perhaps it came from my subconscious. It's resurfaced now.
After Vernazza comes Manarola, clinging to its cliff top. High above the village, a group of hikers have stopped for lunch. What's on the menu? The renowned Ligurian Focaccia, a soft bread flavored with olive oil, an unmissable regional speciality. A well-earned refreshment before hitting the road again. The path winds along the coast. Down below, the Mediterranean shows its many hues of blue, while the cliffs drop steeply away to the sea. People come from all over the world to see its beauty, and the Italian people are equally enthusiastic.
We may well be Italian, but Italy's a big place and we'll never see it all. We heard about this marvelous place. We decided to come in winter, when there are fewer people around, so as to fully appreciate this truly incredible landscape. We're all from different places, so we formed a small group, and today we're here in this paradise, and it's completely deserted. We were told that in summer, there are sometimes queues of people here, but today it's just fantastic.
While the coast is only 15 kilometers long from the first to the fifth village, there are no less than 120 kilometers worth of hiking routes. Some run parallel to each other, some run crisscross. You're really spoilt for choice. The southernmost village, Riomaggiore, is a maze of narrow streets and steep steps. This is Cinque Terre's newest village. This lively array of houses, all clustered together, seem to tell the story of the families that influenced their construction. Seen from on high, the aerial view reveals the fragile balance between man and nature. Because the Cinque Terre's true riches are to be found here on these steep hills. People have built terraces where vines thrive beneath the Mediterranean sun. A colossal undertaking, resulting in a quite unique wine, the fruit of an exceptional soil. It was Heidi Bonanini's father who managed to obtain the coveted UNESCO label for the Cinque Terre. The family have always been winemakers in this patchwork of vines and dry stone walls.
It's a very old story, dating back over 1,000 years, during which time the climate particularly lent itself to wine growing. And its inhabitants transformed these impermeable, inhospitable hills, which were almost impossible to use, by undertaking these enormous earthworks and building walls, in order to establish their own agriculture. It obviously had to be vines in a region such as this, with a climate like this one. It's been ideally suited to wine growing for over 1,000 years, so this is its main form of agriculture.
A landscape like no other, where every single square meter of land has been reclaimed from the mountain.
The difficulties here are quite unique to this environment. Its steep slopes and climatic conditions mean that winemaking is extremely tough. It's obvious that making wine in Cinque Terre is difficult. Walking on these pathways, you quickly realize that it's sometimes hard to stay upright. But its difficulty gives its characteristics. So we have the sun, the sea, the salt, a little earth, and a lot of rocks. And all of this is expressed by the wine.
But these terraces are held by stone walls. More than 6,000 kilometers of wall, hand-built over the centuries, which hold the earth and protect the vines. You need to be a native to avoid suffering from vertigo, and every gesture is an inherited ancestral skill. Mauro is 85 years old and works here all year round. But today, only 5% of the original vineyard area remains. Young people have turned to other activities.
It used to go all the way down to the forest.
But not anymore.
No, it's all been abandoned.
Is it too far?
No, it's not that. There weren't even little trains before. You had to take the grapes from over there, almost in the sea, and bring them back here on your back.
Consequently, the Cinque Terre's main challenge is to maintain sufficient enthusiasm to ensure the vineyards are not lost.
When we see this, we say that the wall's getting fat. The earth is bulging, and it's a sign that it's about to collapse. So sooner or later, this little wall, as we saw elsewhere, is doomed to fail. Maintaining dry stone walls is a very costly business because very few people do it. So, construction costs range from between 120 to 150 euros per square meter. To transport the stones, which were once carried on people's backs, helicopters are now used, and they're very costly per minute. But it's worth it if we want to save this place.
Without these walls, erosion would carry it all away. The land would slide towards the sea, taking with it the fragile balance of the Cinque Terre. The villages and the vineyards, everything would disappear. So every year, enormous sums of money are devoted to maintaining this precious but fragile heritage, as a reminder that the Cinque Terre's beauty is a delicate balance between man and nature, a priceless treasure to be kept for future generations. The seaward slopes are guarded by sanctuaries such as Nostra Signora della Salute, which overlooks Manarola. The sanctuary of Soviore, overlooking Monterosso, was renovated a few decades back by a local man who'd made his fortune in Argentina. Their strategic hilltop positions made them ideal lookout posts against Saracen invaders. Too heavy for some of the steeper inclines, olive trees prosper on the shallower slopes of the peaks, where this elderly couple perpetuate the olive-picking tradition. The resulting oil has a quite unique flavor. It has been appreciated throughout Italy since the Middle Ages, probably as far back as the Byzantine period, when conquerors had their eye on the region. The oil is now only produced in small quantities, and families generally keep it for themselves. Let us go back down to Manarola. Officially, the village is part of Riomaggiore, while Corniglia is part of Vernazza. Along with Monterosso, the 5 villages only amount to 3 districts. At night, as Christmas approaches, the village is adorned with lights. It's a magical display, with the village seemingly floating between sea and mountains. But Christmas has its own very special place here. A giant nativity scene lights up the night on a hill overlooking the village. Dreamed up by a local man who dedicated his life to it, it's now a source of local pride. Its first year in the Guinness Book of Records was the year its creator passed away, leaving a luminous legacy behind him. The figurines made of recycled materials seem to watch over the villagers. In this essentially religious display, a few fish have found their way in, a reminder of the sea that borders the Cinque Terre. We're now leaving the coast to head inland. Here, the Vara and the Magra rivers wind through parallel valleys, connecting the sea to the mountains. A short distance from the sea, as the crow flies, a number of hamlets are connected to the coast by a network of pathways, which enabled villagers to endlessly come and go. Perched on high ground with far-reaching views, they're just as successful as the Cinque Terre. With their colored houses and stone facades, they draw both visitors and investors. And stonemasons like Luan are giving the old stones a new lease of life.
People come here from all over the world. They come to see this place. They really like it. They like the houses here, as they're very old houses. They come here to look around, to buy, and to renovate. We have to give new life to the stones, make them as new. We have to clean them. It's a lot of work because we then have to repoint them, leaving the stones exposed, because people want to see them.
Nowadays, these sleepy villages are waking up. Their cobbled streets and stone houses bear witness to a rich past of barbarian invasions and power struggles between the region's great families. The long-abandoned houses are being renovated by an increasing number of enthusiasts. Strolling through these age-old streets is another one of the joys of the Cinque Terre region. Visitors often think they're coming to the seaside, but end up finding themselves in the lush mountainside. In the past, chestnuts were a staple food here.
Before the Second World War, people here lived exclusively on chestnuts, as it was the most abundant foodstuff in the area. Without chestnuts, life was just a struggle for survival.
Every village had a number of these drying sheds to ensure the villagers' prosperity. Chestnut flour was a real asset and served as a kind of exchange currency with the coast.
Inhabitants of the Cinque Terre came with salted anchovies. And the villagers here exchanged chestnut flour for coastal products. It was important, but that wasn't all. We also traded with the people of Parma, who came with wheat flour and left with chestnut flour. We lived exclusively on this product.
On the banks of this river, an old flour mill has risen from its ashes. Entirely renovated, it's a clear example of traditional skills, where water was used to drive the wheels that ground the chestnuts to mill the precious flour. Its owner, a local history enthusiast, showed us around a building steeped in history.
In 2019, we had the chance to buy this old mill, which was falling into ruin, and restore it. It was the last remaining mill, and it seemed right to save something that was part of local people's history and once belonged to our ancestors. So we restored it. We kept the original architecture, and we also recovered all the mill's old ironwork to make a small museum of the mills of Val di Vara. We're considering teaching chestnut grafting so that young people can learn a skill that was a key activity in the region. In other words, all there is to know about chestnut production. Here we also restored the old mill kitchen, preserving its original architecture, including the fireplace, the old bell oven, as well as the earthenware dishes used for cooking chestnut pastry and cakes.
Aunt Maura, who grew up in the countryside, has always cooked with chestnut flour.
The chestnut tree was vital because it gave us our daily bread. People would starve if they didn't have it. The chestnuts were dried, ground, and made into flour. And people trampled it down so that it would be well compacted for winter. Chestnut flour, water, and salt. And a few pine nuts, and a little milk to make chestnut cake. There's basil in the pesto. Some people like garlic, and some don't. There are pine nuts and oil. Pound it in a pestle and mortar, and then add Parmesan. It was Parmesan in La Spezia. In Genoa, they also use Sardinian cheese. Parmesan was cheaper in La Spezia because it was brought from Parma in exchange for salt.
For the pesto, all the ingredients are carefully pounded together until a smooth and flavoursome paste is obtained. Following that, it's time for the testaroli, a local speciality. The cook spreads the batter on the testa, a metal platter which people made themselves, which is then covered with another and allowed to cook on a low heat. This traditional technique gives these thick pancakes their unique texture. Then she prepares the panigacci, bread rolls baked in a wood-fired oven. The dough is put into an earthenware dish to trap the heat and cook it perfectly. This is what you'd typically find on a table in La Spezia region. Chestnut cake, testaroli, panigacci, pesto, and garden vegetable pie. Enjoy your meal. To help it go down, are you ready for a walk or a mountain bike ride? There are nearly 150 kilometers of inland tracks, which connect each village and lead to the Cinque Terre. They're great for hiking all year round. In summer, they're shaded, and in the autumn, they're thickly covered with chestnut leaves and alive with the scent of the countryside.
These tracks are an essential part of the area's history. They used to be thoroughfares, and without them, there was no connection between the villages. Then gradually the roads came, with cars and all that. They fell into disuse until associations decided to ensure their upkeep, with teams of volunteers maintaining them for leisure activities. Now that these pathways have been restored, they've become a real asset. They're a perfect incentive for tourists who can enjoy this beautiful place, where they can walk and just be in nature. I think that's priceless, invaluable.
New or forgotten tracks are continually being discovered as people walk these paths, and they're soon to be painstakingly mapped. Because this area is so steeped in history, every walk becomes a voyage of discovery. Many clubs of enthusiasts enjoy these mountain paths. The geographical layout of the region can be fully understood this way. These cyclists started out from Palio del Golfo in the Vara Valley, and after a few kilometers amongst the pines and chestnut trees, they're crossing the ridge overlooking the Cinque Terre. As one follows the river Vara along its 60-kilometer journey through the region, extensive pastureland serves as a reminder that the upper Val di Vara has always been used for livestock farming. Nestling deep in the valley, the small town of Varese, Ligure has always occupied a strategic position, because it's at the crossroads of the road to Parma and the road to Tortona. The village was a trading post for goods from the coast and from the Po Valley. Varese was also renowned for its gastronomy, and the local aristocracy used to favor a type of pasta shaped like a Genoese coin, the corzetto. The ultimate was to have them stamped with the family crest. This long-lost practice has been revived by Alessandra. Her work consists of engraving the stamp to mark the pasta, time-honored craftsmanship that attests to the enduring nature of Ligurian traditions.
At the time, my father had learnt basic carpentry skills and, for a bit of fun, reworked this stencil, which is no less than a pasta stamp, known as a crosetti. And it's a very, very old tradition. Each family had their own design on one side, perhaps with their surname, and on the other, they had a more fanciful, esoteric, religious, or naturally themed design.
One could also have one's own coat of arms, of course. Farther along down the Vara lies Brugnato, where the old town is surprisingly shaped like a key. This unusual architecture was designed to protect the cathedral of St. Peter, St. Lawrence, and St. Columbanus, built by Benedictine monks in the 11th century. The visit can be somewhat disorientating, as going round in circles makes it easy to lose one's bearings. A few rolling green hills further on, we reach the entrance to one of the most beautiful gulfs in the world, that of La Spezia, which is so naturally protected that Napoleon wanted to make it his Mediterranean stronghold. In its natural setting where the mountains meet the sea, almost every house has breathtaking views, and the town has grown over the centuries. A monument pays tribute to the heroism of resistance workers who helped Holocaust survivors sail to Israel. Cannons facing the Gulf bear witness to its strategic past, both well defended and open to the Mediterranean. Over the centuries, La Spezia has developed into a cultural and architectural crossroads. Its streets tell its story through a blend of Art Deco and modern buildings. The town has retained its charm while still moving with the times. Thanks to its armory, industrial activity developed and prospered. La Spezia became a major technological hub at one time, particularly in the electronics field with the work of Guglielmo Marconi, who perfected his experiments with radio waves. The very first radio transmission was broadcast from La Spezia. The post office is one of its architectural gems, a wonderful example of Italian rationalism. It's characterized by its clean lines and functionality. Built in the 1930s under the fascist regime, it embodies Italian rationalist architecture by its geometric shapes and lack of superfluous ornamentation. Its imposing facade and spacious interior reflect an era when architecture sought to be both practical and symbolic. In the lower part of the tower, a mosaic by Prampolini and Figlia clearly characterizes futurist architecture, as set out within its artistic manifesto. With a communications theme, it represents all the means of communication then current, maritime, land, and air. As day breaks, the Gulf is home to a now age-old activity. As they do every day when conditions are favorable, Eugenio and his small crew head out to their mussel bed. The activity began in Italy during the Middle Ages, when the techniques now used were first developed. For some decades now, it has become an essential activity in La Spezia. The beds, which were originally near the coast, were moved further out to sea, where the currents favor mussel growth. La Spezia's mussels play a central role in the city's culinary heritage, even its countrywide heritage.
It's said that the history of mussels in La Spezia dates back 150 years from the modern era. In 1870, the military arsenal was built for the Kingdom of Italy. The new Italy was expanding. Sailors from Taranto came here to serve in the army and saw the opportunity for breeding mussels as they'd already done in Taranto. Because in Italy, it's a centuries-old tradition they'd already started in Roman times, even before. They started with oysters and then moved on to mussels. The people of La Spezia quickly caught on and did the same. For instance, my son who works with me here is the 6th consecutive generation. As such, from the beginning in 1897 until today, we have continually worked in this domain despite all the ups and downs inherent in a nature-related activity. We already have national recognition for the excellence of our produce. That's a source of pride, particularly as there are a lot of young people here who, despite the crisis, have no intention of changing careers. So basically, it's a good job, a bit tiring, but in an exquisite setting.
The mussels of La Spezia further enhance the region's reputation, and visitors, in addition to enjoying the Gulf's beauty, can also delight in its bounty. A number of fine restaurants have built their reputations on their preparation, with two specialities in particular: stuffed mussels combined with mortadella and pasta with mussels, a now legendary dish which should not be missed. Gulf mussels are also the inspiration for one of the region's most popular events, which has been faithfully celebrated on the first Sunday in August for a century. It's called the Palio del Golfo, meaning the banner of the Gulf. The whole region comes alive on this particular day, but for team coaches like Claudio, it's a whole year's work that is at stake.
It's 100 years old this year. It all started with the old mussel fishermen and farmers. To get the mussels back to market to sell, they started a race, a kind of competition amongst themselves, where the winner could charge the best prices.
The race is exclusively reserved for the 13 districts located around the Gulf. Each district has its own boat, a rowing boat of strictly controlled size and weight, manned by a crew of 4 rowers and a helmsman. All have been carefully chosen and have trained hard throughout the year for this one race, as winning is a source of immense prestige. The rules have remained virtually unchanged since its beginning. Crews must complete a 2-kilometer sprint around 2 buoys 500 meters apart, hence the importance of the helmsman, who, as well as setting the rower's rhythm, must also get the tightest possible turn with the tiller. They train hard to get it right, as it often determines the victor.
This is the banner for the older men's category. There's also one for the younger boys, similar to this one, and one for the girls' category. Each category has its own banner. This one, San Venerio, is dedicated to the Palio, possibly the most important one, as it's the oldest participants.
Victory creates scenes of immense jubilation. The feeling of joy is shared by the thousands of visitors who are lucky enough to be present for this unforgettable event. At the far eastern end of the Gulf, away from all the hustle and bustle, the little port of Lerici makes it clear why this part of the Gulf of La Spezia was named Gulf of Poets in the 19th century, in honor of the many artists who came here for inspiration. Lerici was a natural port for the Ligurians, the Etruscans, and the Romans. It reached its peak during the Middle Ages, when merchants, travelers, and pilgrims sailed here to travel on to northern Italy for commercial or religious reasons. While touring the Cinque Terre, discovering the Gulf of Poets is an essential part of visiting the region. It can, of course, be done by car, but the Gulf's generally calm waters make it a wonderful place to visit by boat, whatever the season. Generally speaking, the trip includes an onboard picnic or cocktail, and guides like Francesca make it a fascinating experience as she shares her immense knowledge of every creek, inlet or little harbor, turning it into a real voyage of discovery.
Over the last few years, people have started coming to La Spezia. Once they're here, they like to visit the Gulf of Poets, which is also part of the Pirate Coast. The Pirate Coast is the entire coast because there were many pirates here in the Gulf who came to plunder villages and islands, particularly as there were monks who had become rich in the Gulf. They had become a source of wealth in the region. Thereafter, we go to Porto Venere. Porto Venere represents 8 centuries of unbroken history. It hasn't changed. So it's a village that people come to visit because it's like walking through history. Basically, 8 centuries of unbroken history.
Porto Venere is protected from the swell by the Tino and Tineto Islands opposite Lerici. The 2 small harbors are like a pair of pincers at the Gulf's entrance. In the 12th century, they made up the easternmost defense of the Republic of Genoa. Today, along with the Cinque Terre, the village is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The narrow streets help to cool the houses in summer. Protected by its citadel, the little harbour town is another of the region's gems, and a pleasant surprise for its visitors.
Then there's the Gulf of Poets. That's another story, beginning in the 19th century with Percy and Mary Shelley. They moved from London to live in San Terenzo.
On the shores of the Gulf is Telaro, where Mario Soldati died, a village now classified as one of Italy's most beautiful. Less than 30 kilometers from Cinque Terre as the crow flies, this region is surrounded by the Apennines in all their glory. In the mountains, which are already part of Tuscany, nestling between the sea and the hills, lies the legendary town of Carrara, which has left its mark on the region's history. Nature and history blend beautifully here. Once a strategic location for the Byzantines and the Lombards, it's now renowned for its local treasure, marble. People have been quarrying the exceptionally pure marble from these mountains for over 2,000 years. It was formed 200 million years ago when the limestone sediments of an ancient sea were transformed by the heat and pressure of tectonic plates. Michelangelo called it the stone of the gods. Walter and his father have made the quarries a place to visit.
Nobody used to come here. People only came if they'd lost their way. So my father became a pioneer of quarry tourism. There was nothing here before. There are fewer quarry workers these days, but it's still a great place. If you visit a quarry, you'll really see what man can do.
Techniques have evolved over time, but the artworks made from Carrara marble are eternal. They contributed to the glory of Rome and took their place in the Renaissance, ensuring posterity for many great artists. Today, visiting the quarries is an opportunity to discover human craftsmanship and versatility, as in the small museum recreating a quarryman's dormitory. When he came up from town, he would carry his shoes over his shoulder to avoid wearing them out, so precious were they. They ensured that he didn't hurt his feet while working. Even now, after all these years, less than 5% of the marble has been extracted from the mountain. thousands of artworks are yet to be created. Massa, Carrara's near neighbor, is located at the easternmost point of the region in Tuscany. The town is overlooked by its castle, one of the largest built by the Malaspina family in the 13th century. One member of this distinguished family was granted the title of Prince of the Holy Roman Empire, and the architecture demonstrates this powerful influence. In this cluster of towns built in close proximity to the Gulf of Poets is Sarzana, yet another discovery. Founded over 1,000 years ago, the town has kept its charm and strategic importance. One of its most impressive constructions is its citadel, built in 1487 on the orders of Lorenzo de' Medici. Unique in Liguria, the fortress is a masterpiece of Florentine Renaissance military art. In 1204, the Diocese of Luni settled in Sarzana, fleeing the malaria which was devastating the coast. To welcome the many thousands of pilgrims traveling to Rome, a magnificent cathedral was built, Santa Maria, an architectural masterpiece that took almost 300 years to complete. Located on the Via Francia, this cathedral was a major spiritual halt for pilgrims. They stopped here to worship the precious blood. Even now, the building still affects people with its grandeur and history. Treasures abound on the inside. A Renaissance altarpiece by Leonardo Riccomani, a 12th century crucifix painted by Mastro Guglielmo, a walnut ceiling sculpted by Pietro Gambelli, and paintings signed by the region's greatest artists. Santa Maria Cathedral is far more than just a place of worship. It's a journey across the centuries, an invitation to discover the art, history, and spirituality that have shaped Sarzana. A few doors down from the cathedral, on Via Mazzini, another monument awaits visitors. But this temple is dedicated to pastries. Gemmi is considered to be a shop with historic value. It was founded in the early 19th century. In 1934, it was taken over by Silvano Gemmi, who devoted more than 60 years of his life to making it a place where architecture and the fine art of pastry making blended harmoniously. Still today, one could be forgiven for wondering whether it's a place of gastronomy or a real palace. It equally made its reputation for its spungata, a speciality dating back to antiquity, which the Romans made for their New Year's celebrations. Silvano's granddaughter keeps the recipe alive.
In fact, it's a Sardinian dessert. It's linked to Sardinian tradition. It originates from the ancient Luni, although it's clearly been modified over the years. But it was already present in Roman times. My father really liked it and made it his own, modifying it to his own taste, and created a cake that still has great appeal and is highly appreciated today. So the place became well known not only for its style, but also for its recipes.
We are now just a whisper away from where we started. The little village of Monte Marcello overlooks both the mouth of the Magra and the Gulf of La Spezia. The Mediterranean glitters gold all the way to the horizon. On a clear day, you can see the coast of Corsica. Just a few kilometers of coastline which have risen from a deep gulf. The villages of the Cinque Terre, set in their rocks like precious stones, attract ever-increasing numbers of visitors from all over the world. They come to discover a region where man has risen to nature's challenges. This is a landscape where green earth and blue sea play together in eternal harmony.